Hello and welcome back. We are here at Ground Level Theology. I'm your host, Mike Malcolm, with my co-host, Dave Hoffman. Dave, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. What's up, guys?
We have a good one today. We have a
Mm.
I was really excited all week. Not gonna lie, from the previous podcast, I felt like we had some theology juices just flowing through. We could have probably gone on for another couple hours. I don't know if
Easily.
that's how you felt. So I was really excited this week to jump into this week's podcast. And this week's podcast is about Christian protests, amongst other things, but we're going to be looking at a few Christian protests and how, or even if we should be engaged in it, because I've heard even that being debated. So,
Yes. Mm.
um, yeah, let's just ask that right off the bat. Should we be protesting in general? Because, I mean, it doesn't that make us look a lot like, I don't know, the anarchists and the stuff that we're actually trying to combat against?
Oh, what a great question. Because we're always, we're always trying to find balance in an unbalanced world where it's okay. How do we make our presence known? How do we speak the truth? But we do so in love and we do so kindly, and we don't want to step on anyone's toes, and we want them to know that we're a loving community and gracious, but without watering down our
Hmm.
faith, without muddling our convictions and almost throwing them out. We don't. It's like, what do we do? Do we address the culture head on? Do we use their tactics?
Yeah, yeah.
And like, yeah, do we fight fire with fire, or do we try to put out the fires? And then when you dump everything, you just wash away what you wanted to actually convey and communicate.
Yeah, I think that's the argument that a lot of people are making that I find, well, at least that they're making on why we shouldn't be. It's like, well,
Hmm.
that makes us just like them. We shouldn't be canceling people because then we are essentially cancel culture and we hate cancel culture.
Right.
And I'm just thinking, really, do we not protest? I mean, is that sort of our Christian history that we just kind of lay on our backs and let everyone just run over us? Um, some people might say so. It's like, oh, Jesus was around in Roman occupancy, and then the
Hmm.
early church was the persecuted church, and all these like. So do we just let culture win then?
Right. Well, especially like with the words um, of Paul, do not be conformed to the image of this world, but to the image of the Son. And especially anyone that enjoyed high school, and I don't really know a whole lot of people who did, because usually the people who did, um, yeah, usually we didn't like them necessarily. But the people like me, yeah, we were nonconformists. We love to go against the
Hmm.
tide. We love to be rebels, and then what happens when you get a bunch of nonconformists together conforming to nonconformity? Um,
That's
I
true.
know that's a lot to think about, and it's like, and so what ends up happening is like you're going to conform to something, someone, you become who you surround yourself with, and so inevitably you're going to protest something.
Yeah.
And so what I'm trying to do is boil it all down to yes, Christians are going to protest. Christians, I would say, are obligated to protest.
Mm.
But like a lot of things, we need to be careful in our definition of terms of what do we mean by protest. Does it mean
Yeah.
we need to go burn places down? Do we just do we just have a parade? Or do we, we share a post on Facebook
Hmm.
or Insta? Do we just pray in our prayer closets where our Heavenly Father sees and we know that He's the one that actually do something about it? Um, what does it mean? I think Christians should protest. What does it mean to protest as a Christian?
Yeah.
I think that's what we really want to get into.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point too, because if we're gonna push back on the whole idea of like, oh, the Christian church has just thrived theologically when people run us over, and Jesus
Hmm.
says we should be meek, so everyone should just run us over. We should let culture run rampant, and the persecuted church is the thriving church anyways. Which, believe it or not, I have heard people say that they are
Hmm.
pro culture winning and getting us towards persecution in our own culture, like in the United States. They want us to move towards a place in which preachers are being thrown into prison and we go into and we're persecuted and all this stuff
Hmm.
because the persecuted church historically is the one that runs rampant, is the one that booms the most. And so
Yeah.
it's like, hold
Mm,
on. Let's
yeah.
push back
Take
here a
that
little
back.
bit.
Yeah.
Let's
Reel it in.
not flatten history. So black and white. The early church, which was the persecuted church, also was the church that protested the most. We can
Yeah.
talk about the Arian heresy that eventually ended
Mm.
at the Council of Nicaea. We can talk about the Gnostic heresies that Paul was writing out against and he was protesting against. And we can talk about all these early church histories. I haven't even left the first maybe 300 years of the church's growth. So we have the infancy, and yet here we have the most, if I can use the term boycotting theologically of
Yeah.
culture. And
Yeah.
so I really do think that it's just this very caricatured point to say, oh, the persecuted church is the one that grows the most. And it's like, well, no, we protest against culture as long as our voice can be heard.
Yes. And especially two things. One, in the United States of America, I mean, what the First Amendment, like people, one, they died for that,
Yeah.
and two, the main reason they even fled um, England was the Church of England and religious um, structure. Like, not even just, it's good to have structure. God's a God of order, but to the point where the state is mandating what can and cannot be done in a church, as opposed to Christ being the head and what the scriptures principally teach. And
Hmm.
that's a scary thing, no matter where you are, what country you're in. But if we're in America, where we actually have the freedom of speech and we have the freedom of religion, it doesn't always feel like that. And we see videos, but we have that as a right that we should
Yeah.
be able to appeal to and use. And because I know there are people, underground church in um, the Middle East, underground church in China, people that would love, to be able to like for Jesus, ignore for Satan, you know, uh, because and
Yeah.
they would love
Yeah.
to be able to go to a church like we just met for church in person, in
Uh-huh.
public. Like we just got to sing out loud and didn't have to fear being heard.
Hmm.
Uh, and just that wonderful opportunity that's presented. So we get to do that. And even Michael Horton, he's the president of chancellor at Southern Baptist Theological Cemetery. Oh gosh,
Oh,
seminary.
seminaries or cemeteries.
Yeah, you were once dead, but you have now been made alive. Great guy. He actually mentioned like one of the biggest problems, one of the greatest problems he thinks is facing the church, or not even facing the church, in the church of all things. Right now, he thinks it's the church's silence. Interesting
Wow.
enough, one of the biggest problems in the church today is our
Yeah.
silence, especially where we're always like on the defensive.
Hmm.
And like the Lord is like, I don't need anybody to defend me. Like I've given you the truth. Go into the world. Even there's the doctrine of the church militant, where it's not necessarily like Islam, where it's like convert or die, but like militant as in military, where it's like the Lord has been died and risen, has conquered sin and death and the evil powers.
Hmm.
And it's like, so let's go. Like we're on the winning team. Like, it's not like Braveheart. Like, I'm not trying to like let's rally the
Yeah.
troops, but it's like, come on. Like, we live in one of the best countries, with a great First Amendment and a great First Amendment right. It's a right, and let's use that. And
Yeah.
like, to do what? Not to just take over and go, you're wrong, we're right. Get rid of this, get rid of that, but to be like, hey, this is the truth that can save your soul from eternal separation
Yeah.
of a holy, loving God. And
Wow.
so, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
not trying to let's go.
there is so much there. It's really just phenomenal stuff. You really just laid out something that's just so
Sorry.
concentratedly good. And I'm struggling to remember everything where I was just like, man, I gotta say something about that and then too. But
Yeah.
one of the things that I
Sorry. The
do,
comment section can let us know, what
right,
we need
make
to
a
listen to.
podcast about this, which you guys are
Yeah.
welcome to do.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that I definitely want to touch on was yes, Michael Horan and you reiterated it, quoting him is the biggest thing facing the church is its silence, and it just reminded me of how our church we went out to our local park, we were giving out free hot dogs, free refreshments and stuff, and we had people just walking by on their daily walk. We'd come over, we'd spark up conversations with them. We'd start praying with just these random people that are just going about their day. They're just their normal flow. And we were having divine encounters. I mean, so many by the hour, right? And there were some people that are saying, I was just praying today in the morning. I haven't opened my Bible in a while, and I was praying to find a church.
Wow.
Here you
Mm.
are, and I was just like, whoa. And I tried to tell as much of my congregation as possible as I was talking to them throughout the day about it wasn't just this one person, it was multiple people talking about this. And I was just thinking, imagine if we were a church that was simply sitting in our building like
Mm.
everyone else. And so that's what really struck me. It's the church's silence because everyone's out there already waiting for someone to talk to them. They're waiting with these desires. They're waiting with someone to approach them and start the conversation regarding religion, regarding faith, and regarding Christianity. Because whenever I talk to people out of the blue, and if they come to learn that I'm a pastor or something like that, you just see them switch. They're like, oh, you're just not
Mm-hmm.
some normal person, you're a pastor. I have so many questions for you
Yes.
regarding the faith. And it's like, all right,
Yes.
I'll be your
Oh, okay.
encyclopedia, you know?
Hopefully.
Do
Like,
you get
God,
that a
help
lot
me
too?
now. Oh,
Or,
yeah, yes. Oh, it doesn't matter. Like, even if I was officiating our buddy's wedding,
mhm.
in Florida, and just even some of his groomsmen, just like, oh, hey, while we got a second before the ceremony, while I have you, like, I got a
Yeah.
couple questions for you. And you're like, oh man, like it's like you're a pastor and you seem like a cool guy. Like, what do you think about bam?
Yeah.
Like, like just some
The
like
biggest
lotus, like,
topic you
oh
could think about. What do you think
yeah.
about predestination?
Oh
Like,
gosh,
I
really?
can I
What's your
borrow you for
address?
the
I'll give
next
you a
2 weeks?
book.
Yeah, I know,
Yeah,
right?
like I'll mail you a book that says it a whole lot better than I ever could.
Right.
Oh gosh.
It's it always is like that. And it's just so funny too because it's
Yeah.
once they know that you're a Christian, once they know that you're some source of information that is non-threatening that they can probe into for the
Mm,
answers that they've been thinking about for a long time, they just want to sit you down. They want to sit you down and work through this stuff that they're working through. And no one is going out to do this. And I don't mean
no.
no one as in literally no one, but by relative stretch of those who are in our congregation in the seats, and I'm not just saying my congregation, I'm talking about the global
Right.
church.
Right.
Those people that call themselves Christians go to church maybe 2 or 3 times, sit in the seats, versus those people that do that as well, but also tell people about Christ and approach other people, whether it be their friends, whether it be their family, or whether it be strangers.
Hmm.
It's just relatively no one by comparison.
I know, and especially, we talk about and why do they call it the silent majority,
Yeah.
right? Like just the irony there
Right.
already.
Yeah.
Uh, because you also you're gonna think like if we don't like opposition, no, like, that's like with the irony of the other irony of like yes. Someone cut me today and now I'm bleeding for the Lord as Jesus bled for me. And it's like, okay, like you're literally bleeding. Let's get a band-aid.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
and also, but like to understand, we don't like opposition, and we always go worst case scenario like all the time. We're
Yeah.
worry warts is what we do naturally. We just go, ah, and we just think of a particular individual that's gonna scream at us, say rude things, like the worst case scenario,
Yeah.
and then we say, hey, would you just let me talk? And then they go, oh my gosh, like you just said the worst. You just cut me off. You just
Yeah.
interrupted me. You just asserted blank attribute
Hmm.
that you didn't even know you had. Um,
Yeah,
not good
we picture
label.
like, hey, do you have a moment of your time? I'd love to talk to you about Jesus. And then they just smack you in the face. It's like
Yeah,
that's
like
what we
how
think is
dare
gonna
you?
happen.
No, and what ends up actually happening is, and it's sad because there used to be a time. I don't want anyone to disagree with me ever. I want to be right about everything all the time.
Yeah, that's what I
And
am
even if
all
I
the
am
time.
right, like, but it's like what happened to like there are most people still agree to disagree.
Hmm.
And they and we've always and thankfully Mike, well, our talks, our conversations, I've seen you in person do this. I think you've seen me do it. I like to think so. Where it's like, you know what, like we're just upfront and honest with people. It's like, you know what, you might not like the answer I give. I'm going to be kind about it, and I'm going to respond to you respectfully. And you still might not like my answer, but at least you know exactly what I'm thinking, where I stand, and you at least deserve that.
Yeah,
Um, and I'm not going to make you do anything, but you asked me the question, so I deserve to give you my answer.
right.
And
And
it's just
that's
that
seed
doesn't happen all the
planting
time.
just in and of itself right there. Because if
Correct.
you can at least challenge their worldview to where their worldview is just a little bit less stable, and present for them the your worldview, which is stable and answers the very questions that you're asking them, that could be a
Hmm.
source of, let's call it atheistic doubt, where now they're doubting whether what they have is reliable, but you
Mm,
have something as an alternative that might actually be real that they can go to. And so that's
yeah.
yeah,
And it's not just like, oh, it's because of how you said it. It's not what you said, it's how it's not actually
yeah,
just how you said it. Because we've had like blunt, straightforward conversations with people like, you know what? Hey, you just said that, and like, okay, fine, let's humor that. And we're like
yeah,
talking like we're animated. It's like, fine, okay, let's say you're right. We got this, and like
exactly.
it's not like we're just gonna take it easy. And it depends on the level of pushback. You see the
Mhm.
genuineness where it's like, I don't know what to think,
Yeah,
versus the guy that it's like, well, did you read this? It's like, okay, it's like, well, have you read this? And like, okay, like I don't have to just you know
yeah,
put
exactly.
up the gloves all the time. Like, give a couple well placed, little pricks to the heart. Um,
Yeah.
chinks
Oh
in the
yeah.
armor.
For sure. And so we can protest. All right, let's bring this back up.
Yes.
We can
Okay. Let's put that there.
that's
Capital
ultimately where
all
we're
caps.
at.
Yes.
We're
Yeah.
being silent when we are allowed to use the voices that God has given us to
Hmm.
protest. And so I think we both agree. I just felt it out. I'm pretty sure we both agree that we can protest. That being said, one of the um, protests that I find most historically and unanimously agreed upon as good, right? And this is why I always come back to this one,
Hmm.
is MLK and the civil rights movement.
Oh,
They
easy.
their
Yep.
civil disobedience and their protesting. And I say MLK, I didn't just say the civil rights movement. I said MLK and the civil rights movement.
Yeah.
What I'm
Hmm.
getting at here is the civil rights movement through MLK, because distinctly different is Malcolm X's approach by any means necessary. MLK took a very peaceful approach. He did, in his letter from the Birmingham jail, talk about, well, some of the more violent, might just come from the hurt of the individual that is being enacted out. But he didn't
Hmm.
necessarily excuse it as much as
No.
to critique it, saying, why are we burning our own neighborhoods? We are the ones that suffer when we violently protest. And so he loved peaceful protest, as this was the medium which was going to be most widely accepted. And then most importantly, why I love to use this as our example, because it is a model example, is MLK was a Baptist preacher.
Hmm.
He's Dr. Martin Luther King because his doctorate was in a theological subject.
I know. I
And
love it.
and so when we talk about Dr. King, it's less Dr. King as much as it's Reverend King, right? And
Amen, brother.
what people
Amen.
don't remember
Mm.
is that the civil rights movement came through the church, and when they were out in the streets being sicked on by the dogs, being sprayed down by the water hoses, or fire hoses, I should say, they were singing hymns, black spiritual hymns, and
Beautiful.
that's what they were doing. And so this as he preaches Daniel 3:16, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He's saying we are someone who has a divine call in our lives, that we are created equal and in his image, but we are created equal as well according to the founding documents. And so, because this is not a humanist movement, because if you are a humanist, torture tells us you will break.
Yep. Oh,
But if there's a
oh gosh.
divine call in your life, you will die for it. And he makes that decision and says, I am willing to die for it. We are going to go to the ends and achieve this or be cut down. And that is why people were willing to go out into the streets every week. And
Mm.
he gives us the model for Christian protests that I think we can look to at any day and age. And the reason why I love that is not only that we have a divine call to protest, but also Rosa Parks, take away the money and you will hurt them. You know, if you take away your wallet contributing to them, then they will get hurt.
Yep.
And so that's
Money
kind of why I
talks.
really wanted to bring this out. And so we have a few different things that I wanted to highlight. I'll just go ahead and highlight some of these if you want to.
Keep going. Don't stop.
if
Dude,
you
woo.
if you want
Let's
to
go.
if you want to jump in on these and just talk about them a little bit, let me know. First and foremost, Target.
Oh yeah.
Target, I think, was our biggest win from the start.
Mm-hmm. It was amazing.
Yeah, LGBTQ plus swimsuit. It's a children's swimsuit. We're not talking about adults. We're not talking about, oh, you know, I have a right to do what I want. Little kids, children's swimsuit that is quote unquote tuck friendly. Tuck friendly.
Oh, how kind.
Yeah, and it was
Oh.
right there in the middle during the Pride whole thing. And they got a backlash. And who do they get the backlash from? But Christians and conservatives and those on the right. And we
Yep.
said we had enough. We don't like to see that. We don't like you steering down our children and trying to persuade them that they are not who they say they are. That we want you to persuade them down this road of mental illness. We as parents do not like that. Right, and so we
I love it.
pulled our money out of Target, which to me was very easy because I don't go to Target very often.
Yeah.
But
we go to Walmart.
We go to Walmart. Yes, exactly. But that's actually something I wanted to talk about, and so I'll put this forward to you. And if you just have never thought about that, you can put that back onto me. But Walmart is also bad. It also, it has its own problems economically, but also it also would encourage the homosexual community. It also takes place in Pride and has some rainbow stuff. So why don't we cut off both?
Exactly. Why don't we?
I have my own answer, and I can put that forward.
I do
if you
too.
want.
I'm
just putting it forward to you first.
Dude, yeah, of course. And then you can correct me like, oh, I wouldn't have said it that way. And so this is why I'm the host and Dave's the co-host. And no, I'm just kidding.
It's equal.
No, it's equal. That's what co means. It's like, okay. Anyway, okay. Digression.
Yeah.
Well, we're already talking about things that have digressed. Let's,
Yeah.
So I've been an employee of Target, for a hot second. Seasonal help.
Employee of Walmart, so we covered both grounds here.
Nice, let's go. Working there was fine. I think I also got out, well before a lot of this stuff was becoming prevalent, where I didn't have to do any whiteness training, or
oh, that's good.
Yeah. It depends on who you ask.
Yeah. I was gonna say you're a perfect applicant for it,
Yeah, I am. Oh gosh, but it's interesting when you look at some of the things that they've been promoting. Definitely not for it, and like just the idea. Number one, when you see like a tuck-friendly bathing suit, it's like I think about, like, I have a 5-year-old nephew. He doesn't even know his times tables yet.
Yeah.
He's still trying to, and he's like, let alone, hey, this bathing suit lets me, wear a girl's bathing suit even though I'm a boy. You know, he likes dinosaurs and he likes sharks and
Mm-hmm.
robots. And so one, I used to have a discount for Target and it's still kind of stuck. And I was like, oh, I could save money. And it's like, no, I work hard for this money. The Lord's giving it. All money is God's.
Yeah.
And so it's like He gave it to me for a specific purpose, to support myself, my family, and to further His kingdom. Uh, and Target, at this point in time, is not furthering His kingdom.
Right.
I'm sure there are Christians that work at Target, but like, it's not like I can guarantee that, I bought the gallon of milk and this is going to, you know, Jonathan working in the toy section. Um, but also, I think a lot of, kind of like when Jesus is asked about taxes, you render to Caesar what is Caesar's
Yeah.
and give to God what is God's. And it's just like, as long as we're on this earth, we know, unless we like grow food ourselves or make clothing ourselves or literally go off the grid, homestead, even like almost like the Amish folk.
Yeah.
Like this is a necessary evil. We don't survive without this. God has, can God bless us? Um, his bless his people even through the hands of evil, wicked people.
Hmm.
And we just have to see the gift for what it is and not pay attention to who's handing it to us. Um, and that's an angle. And then at the same time, like it's like kind of like don't yell at the waiter if the cook made a bad steak. I'm not necessarily going to yell at the cashier because the board of trustees or whatever of Target is making horrible decisions. Um, but money does talk, and we saw what happened when Christians, uh, well, they did verbally protest as well, but when they actually physically removed their money
Yeah.
from their pocket, like from their bankroll, uh, and Target wasn't like, and they also, unfortunately, there were some other people, some other companies that, well, they were able to learn from them what
Yeah.
happens when you okay, we crossed the line.
Hmm.
We struck a chord, and it also shows to the other community that they were apparently supporting what they really thought about them. And when it's like, oh, you thought we were supportive of you? No, it's because it made us money. And as
Yeah.
soon as we lost the money, you realize we just never really did support you.
Hmm.
This is what we actually think about you.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think there's a huge part of that that really is, you can say, I guess, economic, but just, yeah, very much where the money is at. It's business. This is business, baby.
it's just
Like,
business. Yeah.
I'm just going to take advantage. And for the large part, because we were so silent all the way up until this last year, businesses could make money. It's like I'm going to support the homosexual community, with the
Hmm.
pride flags, and it was like, I don't really like it, but whatever. What are you going to do? Who cares?
Right.
And we were just like that for so long that it just became rampant. And then it was, if you did speak up, I'm not really so much for the homosexual community, you get canceled. And so it got so violent that you really had to take a stand. Something like this, something like taking on this corporation and showing them that we will no longer take the abuse and that it does bother us, was a message that not only we sent to that corporation but to others, because now other corporations are like, oh, this isn't maybe a strategic 100% safe profit plan. And now they're starting to rethink, maybe I don't want to support the homosexual community because I really just want to make money, and that's all it was about, right? And so
Yeah.
um, I'm really glad that you brought up other companies, because we have a couple other companies that I want to highlight. In the second hardest hit company that we've been able to do as a conservative community and as a Christian nation is Bud Light. with the Dylan Mulvaney
Mm-hmm.
can that they, I think, technically never produced. It was someone that was able to render an image like that, and they were
Yeah.
going to go forward with it. This was the first advertising. Dylan Mulvaney, this transgender man who is trying to present himself as a woman, kind of came forward in his own video saying that they're going to go forward with this and that he's really excited. And by and large, Bud Light's customer said, "Hey, that's not us.
Mm-hmm.
That's some progressive company ideology. That is not our ideology. We are not pro-trans, and we do not support this." And so, by and large, Bud Light offending its entire customer base got
Mm-hmm.
got protested, and now they're losing so much money. Like
Yeah.
they've just lost I think an unrecoverable amount of money at this point,
Oh yeah.
and their brand is completely destroyed. And you know the craziest thing about it, because we see this time and time again. We see someone say, "Hey, you know what? I don't really agree with the transgender community," and then they get berated by people with death threats and all this other stuff. And then the very next hour, even sometimes, they put out an apology. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I'm going to educate myself and all this other stuff. But when we have banned, or not banned, when we have protested against Bud Light still has not apologized.
I know.
They still
Um.
have not said sorry. They still have not said this is not our values. They are still just simply trying to, I don't know, put out commercials like, "Oh, look at us, we're redneck," because they have put stuff out like that that is
Yeah.
simply offensive, and
Yeah.
think, oh, it can just wash over, and they've completely just ruined their brand.
Yeah.
Um,
No sign of repentance. And it's like
yeah,
part of me is like it was one thing. It's one thing if you didn't like come out with those new commercials where you're trying to pretend like it never happened, and you're
right,
like, no, we're standing by what we believe in. Because then I'm gonna still think you're wrong. But at least it's like, okay, they got a backbone. This is what they think. Um,
yeah,
and this is kind of how it is. Uh, but this, and it's interesting, like, we're bringing this up in Christian protest also, not just because, like, well, Christians protest Bud Light because, it's alcohol and alcohol's bad.
mm,
Um, no, but it's no, because it's a sin to get drunk, to be intoxicated. It's not, Jesus' first miracle was turning water into wine. So it's not like it's a self-control issue.
yeah,
Not,
yeah.
it's not literally,
It's a sin to be
and
drunk, not to drink,
right. And
and
so, yeah.
those
Um,
two are very much linked together because one
right.
leads to the other. It's just
Right.
what you do. Yeah.
But it was just interesting because like some people are like, well, I was already protesting Bud Light, because it's like I didn't drink anything,
Yeah.
and it's like, well, way to go. And I don't even know if you remember, like you even had people like I don't know if it was Babylon B or like there's so much satire in this world,
Hmm.
but just like like with the Dylan Mulvaney can, where if you drink enough of these, the guy on the can will look like a lady, and and it's
Oh my
like
goodness.
and like and I know uh this is
That does sound like a
I need
Babylon
the
Bee
Lord
thing.
yeah it does but and I need the Lord Jesus because Dylan Mulvaney doesn't need another sponsor deal. He needs the Lord Jesus Christ to redeem
Right.
his soul. Um just like me. I'm not better than this gentleman. I just happen to know the Lord.
Yeah.
Um
Because at the end of
and
the day, what you need is Christ crucified, overcoming death, and being
Sure.
resurrected, just
Yeah.
as much as anyone else, just as much as Dylan Mulvaney. We both need Christ crucified for our sins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just, but at this point in time, and it's again, all of this happens because of marketing, right? They think that
Hmm.
this idea is marketable, which again comes back to this money issue where, and the Lord is clear, the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil, and like
Very well put.
and it's like, and we read that in the church where it's like, okay, yeah, guard ourselves from greed, embezzlement. I want to make sure I don't love the money that I receive more than giving it to others or giving it back to the church. Like I have to remember it's a tool and it's God's tool. and he can give as much as he wants or take away as much as he wants whenever he wants.
Yeah.
I know, I'm sorry, that's kind of how my brain works, just like, uh, and so I have control over what I purchase, thankfully, for the most part. Uh, and so, uh, yeah, these individuals, uh, thinking outside the church now, what Jesus said is true, whether you're a Christian or not. These
Mm.
folks, and I'm for a capitalist society. I love capitalism. It's one of my favorite aspects of our government.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, shameless plug for
It's
capitalism.
capitalism. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm a Christian, and so I also know um, capitalism for the sake of freedom is fantastic, but not the freedom to take away other people's freedoms,
Mm.
including their financial freedoms. Especially, I'm ranting now, but even the eighth commandment, "Thou shalt not steal."
Yeah.
Um, like that, and I'm doing it for our foundations class for our new members, and looking at the eighth commandment, like what does that all mean? What does that all entail? Where you actually, um, goodness, I have it right in. You got to give me a sec. 'Cause I actually have it in front of me, and I don't want
Yeah. You're good.
to butcher it. Um,
You want me to say something while you pull that up?
no, I got it.
Okay.
But like one of the aspects of like you shall not steal, right?
Okay.
Is it requires you. What does this law require you? It requires the lawful procuring and furthering the wealth and outward estate of yourself and others. So actually, by saying you shouldn't steal, it's encouraging, like, hey, you should care about your finances. You should
Mm.
try to grow it,
Yeah.
but grow it wisely in a godly way, not just for yourself, but also for others.
No,
Which
that's really
means,
interesting. Yeah.
um, yeah, and subsequently, just it obviously forbids the inverse of what it forbids whatever does or may unjustly hinder our own or our neighbor's wealth or outward estate. Um, and
Yeah.
so if you,
So
yeah,
the command "do not steal" inherently has be wise with your finances and grow it in a sense so that you don't steal, to
hmm
build yourself up so that
yeah,
that would never be your option.
yep,
Yeah, that's really interesting.
exactly.
That's a
Um,
good point.
where it's like I don't, we try to get to the point where it's like I will always need money,
Right.
because that's how our economy is run. That's how we purchase goods and necessities so that we can live and do what God's called us to do. Um, but then on the other side, like you and I, Mike, we live off of the charity of others,
Yeah.
and their tithe and and really their offerings, their giving, where they're not just doing what they're obligated to do, but they're also giving out of the abundance of their life, the kindness of their heart. Um, and that money that you see, it's right, it's neutral. A $1 bill, I'm going to be frank, a $1 bill put in the offering pan, because that's all my 5-year-old nephew had from his piggy bank,
Hmm.
versus a single that you throw on the floor at a strip club,
Mm.
like,
Yeah.
for the sake of a vivid illustration, it's the
Yeah,
dollar, it's a
it's
dollar.
encouraging more of that
Yeah,
behavior. It's supplying the ability to
correct,
do
it's a
that.
dollar.
Which
It's
is
just a
which
dollar.
is that I mean that's a really good point too because as you're talking about with with capitalism as you want to grow more with this commandment, it's encouraging us to grow so that we do not steal because we ought not steal morally. And so we
Hmm.
ought to be responsible with our money. We want to be responsible with where we're bringing it to or where we're situating it to. And yet these companies are taking this as I want to grow money, but it's sort of as you put as a foundation to this entire thing of like the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. They're
Hmm.
pursuing the end goal of more money, no matter the means, and so they're actually chasing the evil because they want more money. And
Hmm.
so us by being able to protest all of this is really us going right smack between their goal and their motive in saying you will not get money, you will not get your goal through your immoral means. You'll have to
Yeah.
rethink what you're doing. And so, yeah, no,
I love it.
that's a really good
Yeah,
point,
right?
It kind of you kind
Oh,
of
thank
really
you.
like
Just
you kind
kidding.
of really built the entire foundation to that, so we can really see all of that come back around. I we
Mhm.
we run. I want to run through just a couple more companies real quick, and then I want to go over to our next segment. So we have Call of Duty, which I have on here because I really just wanted to highlight as someone who plays games, is sort of a gamer, has that history. Call of Duty banned a streamer for saying on a post regarding the Pride community, literally something along the lines of the real problem is they just have to leave the kids alone, right? Which is not a controversial subject. It's you leave the kids out of your transgender ideology and trying to push that on people, as places like Florida have really stepped out of that. They've really said we
Mhm.
don't want you doing drag story hour, we don't want you indoctrinating our kids, and that's just one of the fronts that they're protesting, as opposed to, like, whether you do it on the outside, that we can talk about that. And so he really comes out and says, the real problem is just leaving the kids alone. And Call of Duty responds with this almost seemingly non-controversial post, and they ban him. This streamer is Nick Merckx, and then his buddy, Dr. Disrespect, responds to this by saying, "Hey, if you're gonna take down his skin and ban him, Skin being a character that they built for him in that you can play in the game, well then I'm going to stop promoting you uh, by not playing your game anymore, which means you won't get the audience that I bring, you won't get the merchandise that my community brings." And so now you have two major streamers that bring millions, like millions of viewers. I really wish that was an understatement,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
they really have a lot of revenue just off of playing games and how many people watch them and support them. And then the third person, Dr. Disrespect's friend, Tim the Tap Man, he jumps on board too. And so all three of these people are not playing the game, not giving Call of Duty its audience, and Call of Duty has just dropped down the charts because these people said, I am willing to stand up for my principles and my morals over you impressing upon me what you want. And so I just want to highlight one more thing about this with Dr. Disrespect, because I learned this not too long ago, but apparently Dr. Disrespect, before he became a streamer, worked for Call of Duty.
Really?
He worked for
Oh,
Call of Duty
whoa.
building maps for them back when you and I played it with like Call of
Oh,
Duty World at War and
OG.
stuff.
Yeah,
And
man.
then he started to stream in this kind of like really robust kind of 90s action hero type persona, and he blew up, and so he just moved into that instead, and that's what he does now. But here he is with a history of being part of Call of Duty. He plays Call of Duty on his streams, but on principle has cut his ties with it. And I just
Oh,
think, like,
man.
wow, if these streamers are willing to do that, if they're willing to, I think we're winning back the culture here.
Yeah. And it almost
And
sounds like I'm glad you shared that. It's almost like even better like this is personal, actually. Like
yeah,
I know people there, you know?
yeah.
And it's like, really? Well, man, yeah.
So
It's like I guess
so that's another one,
wow.
and I just wanted to put that forward because we know about Target, we know about Bud Light. Those are but not a lot of people know about Call of Duty. And I still see posts from Call of Duty where there are streamers that are kind of like um, friendly type, and they're a little bit more on the conservative side, but I still see them playing it, and I'm just like, man, don't you know that like they're against you here? Like, how do you stay out of this? And I think they're just
Mhm.
more in it for the money than they are for the principles. But here we have some people that are stepping up for their principles and doing major damage to the company, that the company really is trying to scramble. And you can see what they're doing. And if you read some of the comments, you can kind of see that they're still being hit by the community, and so it's really funny to see. But moving forward, we have a little bit less of companies that are being hit, like Hershey's and their transgender ideology. You might be able to go to your local Walmart or your local store and see a Hershey's um, a bar with, I think, a slash and the highlighted she, literally her, she, as
Mm-hmm.
in the pronouns. And then most recently, I think, is the Dodgers inviting the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. Now, this is a mock group of a Catholic nuns. They dress up like Catholic nuns in terrible ways, and they are part of the homosexual. They're part of the L plus community, to cut that shorter. And they, what they do is ridicule Catholic faith and thereby also Christian faith.
Yep.
That is their purpose, to parody, to mock, and to ridicule Christian faith. And the Dodgers have invited them in to have their own night, and we protested. And they said, okay, the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence are no longer invited. So we had the W, we had the win, and then on the
Those 2 wins that
protests,
night.
yeah, on the protest of the L plus community, they re-invited them back.
Oh,
And they came,
man.
they actually did their event, but people like Kershaw, which is, I believe, our pitcher,
Oh, yeah. And a good pitcher, man. You need him.
yeah, he came out and spoke out against this, saying it was not good that the Dodgers had essentially attacked his faith with the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. And the Dodgers' response was to allow the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence to come so as to satisfy the L plus community, but then host a faith night on a Saturday for those of the Christian community.
I'm glad they didn't make it on a Sunday, because
Yeah.
that would have been like, on Sunday.
No one showed up to either, because we are not supporting the Dodgers. And so I think that's good. I'm hoping that those who like the Dodgers, I hope we just continue to maybe not ban them, but it is my honest hope that those who are Dodger fans, like most are Catholic, really stand up for your faith, because what they said is very insulting. It's not only would we have the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, but oh yeah, here's your bone.
Mm.
You know, here, this will satisfy you. And we
Yeah, I'd
should be
rather install it.
insulted with
Yeah.
that. That should be very insulting, and we should not be going to Dodger games until they apologize, which is the same thing we're looking for from Bud Light. Nothing short of what you would do for the L plus community. Apologize. Straight up. I want it in a tweet. I want it in a letter form that you are sorry for inviting these people.
Mm.
And that's and so okay,
Yeah.
so we have all of these communities.
Let's go.
I mean, all of these corporations, we're boycotting them. But I want to bring it back to my answer now. Why don't we boycott both Walmart and Target? And you can have your answer, you viewers, and whatever you think and believe, because I do have someone, good friend of mine, who does believe in banning everything, and they're having a real hard time living right now because it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I can't buy this because they, posted this. I can't buy this because they're historically this. And so they're just really on the struggle bus.
Oh my gosh. And I really can't buy anything because I have Bank of America and so I can't use my money now even because they
Yeah, and
because they hold my money.
and so they believe in the cause of protesting, and they're going forward with it, which I'm not
Admire.
knocking it. Yeah, it's very admirable. But in my view, on why we don't cut both Target and Walmart is the view of sending a message.
Mm-hmm.
You have here, you're in a dark alley and you're walking through because you're trying to get home, and 5 people approach you and fan out. Why don't you punch all 5 of them? Because I only have one hand.
Yeah.
Well, what are you doing with why don't you punch all of them? My goal is, if I punch with my right hand as hard as I possibly can, the guy that's closest to me, the biggest guy, and knock him out, the other 4 will run. The
Yeah.
other 4 will get the message, and I might be able to chase them down and start hurting the rest of them. The reason why I don't think we should protest Walmart until Target has gotten the message and apologizes, or until we send those messages to everyone else, is because one, it's not sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
We can't cut everything out right off the top. But two, I want to do it so I send the message that if you do this L plus community, if you do, all this ideology
Pick
stuff,
any sin too.
yeah,
You're like, it's okay for you to steal our merchandise.
yeah.
Like, it's
So
okay
long
for you
as
to lie.
so
Like,
long as we could protest it and send the message that we will not stand for it and put everyone else on their heels, then Walmart will come in line
hmm
because they don't want their base to leave them. Imagine here tomorrow, Target says, I'm sorry for all of this. We're going to be super conservative. We can now turn to Target, go to Target and ban Walmart.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
So I think the reason why we don't do
Yeah.
both is
Target gets a
because
hunting and fishing section.
I know, right? So I think the reason why we don't do both is so that we can properly send the message.
Mhm. Oh,
Um,
I like that. Because that's our biggest problem right now, right? We're not sending them. Well, we send a message either way.
yeah, we did. They're
Uh,
really hurting right now.
by doing nothing, also sending a message is just not the message you want to send. But like, I'm proud. Like, you got to start somewhere. And I don't go to Target, so yay me.
Well, oh man, I'm just looking at our time and we have gone for about
We went
50
ham.
minutes now. Yeah. So I guess we'll just move into our segment, our final segment, I should say, and we'll move into. I really want to come back to this video, uh, but Dave, um, we have some recommended. I'd like to end our podcast with something to build up our community,
Yeah,
right?
agreed.
Not just talk, but something to kind of spark almost an application of, hey, if you'd like to grow, here's something from us on the inside that we recommend. And so, um, I'd like to ask you if you have any recommended podcasts for anyone to like listen to. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. First one's obviously ground level theology. It's a top tier.
Yeah,
Yeah,
actually, I've
I
heard
heard
nothing
it's
but good news from them.
edifying, fruitful, ecumenical.
Yeah, I recommend like, sharing, and
No.
subscribing.
Oh, that's what? Not a bad idea. Uh, Protest bad
Yes.
podcasts by pod. Oh gosh. No.
Replace
Actually,
them with ground level theology.
yes. No. One of my it's one of my favorites now. It was my favorite, and now it's just one of my favorites because I know how back and forth to two. Uh, but it's called Pastors Talk.
Okay.
The pastors it's two pastors talking, not like ground level theology, but it's two other pastors talking. Um, hey, it fit. And,
Yeah, it does. It
it's called
does.
it's called Nine Marks. So I'm out here in Millers, Maryland. I'm about an hour and a half outside of DC,
Hmm.
which isn't it's not right up the road, but a lot of people where I live commute there. And a lot of people probably even heard of them. But Mark Dever and with Nine Marks, he's one of the helped start Nine Marks, and Jonathan Lehman. But Mark Devers is the senior pastor at Capitol Hill Baptist Church in DC. But they have a podcast through Nine Marks website, through the Nine Marks ministries, called Pastors Talk, and they talk about a whole host of topics, whole variety of topics. Where Jonathan Lehman, he kind of just asks Mark a bunch of questions that I know pastors have. Um, I know even people in the pew have. They don't. It's like sometimes it's like you have answers to questions that people didn't even know they had.
Mm.
Sometimes it's like, oh, you know what? Huh? I never thought about that. And here you are. Like I never thought to ask that, but here you are answering it. So let's go.
So
Where
is this a podcast that's geared more
it's
towards
right.
those that are in ministry, or geared more towards the layperson, or both?
Um,
I don't know.
it is. That's the best part. I think it's geared more towards those who are in ministry,
Hmm.
but it is conversational and on the level that any laity would be able to understand it fully, entirely. And if
Hmm.
nothing else, they'd be able to learn something and see maybe if they're called to ministry, or they would have a better understanding of maybe what uh, is entailed of their pastor and some of the responsibilities they might have, or some of the insecurities they might have, or some of the questions they might have. And then they might be able to pray for their pastor differently or better, if not at all. Um, and and also be able to invest where it's like, you know what, that's something that I might be able to help out in the church. Just didn't even know there was a ministry for it, or if we have a ministry for it. And it helps. It definitely helps pastors, but it also gives laity uh, maybe insights into potential giftings that they might have that they just didn't really know about, to tap
Hmm.
into and see where they can serve in the church, and also be a defense for their church,
Right.
where it's just like, oh, whoa, 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 we don't, they're knowledgeable in topics that they feel like the church is facing or whatever.
Okay. So it's a very equipping podcast.
100%. Like, and it's every episode's a different question, or a different, like, it's a different topic of, should we have
Yeah.
small groups, yes or no?
No, I'm just
No.
kidding.
Yeah.
Of course,
Oh,
yeah.
I'm like, my whole service is a small group.
Right.
No, but like, you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
is it necessary? Like, are you a church with or without that? It's a bunch of different
Right,
stuff.
right. Got
Because
it.
it's easy to be insecure if you don't have some things that other churches have.
Okay.
Your turn to talk.
Yeah, well, as far as my own, it's funny that we both kind of chose a very
Of course.
um equipping podcast for this recommended resource. I recommend Pastor's Perspective, which also has three pastors on
Oh
it that are
gosh.
speaking. So it's kind of funny that we both went
You
that
see why
way.
we're best bros? You see why we're friends? Like, this is not
Yeah.
planned. Like, it was planned, but it wasn't planned. Like,
It's a
uh,
it's a for Pastor's Perspective, it's a very Calvary Chapel podcast, in that Brian Broderson is on it, and he's kind of the head of Calvary Chapel. Um, but the thing that I love about it is it's essentially just we have three pastors on there, right? You got I'm failing to remember all three. We have the 1 minute apologist, we have Brian Broderson, and I forgot the essentially the host for all three of them. Um,
hmm.
and it's just
I can
they're
tell it's
just
one of your favorites.
and he just no, what's funny is very much the personality of it,
Hmm.
which is why it's bothering me that I can't remember. But they all sit there, and it's essentially people are calling in to
Hmm.
ask questions, and so sometimes they have some subjects that they want to talk about, but very often it's these questions, and these questions are just by anyone who calls in, right? Obviously,
Hmm.
they get vetted to have a real question, but it's really just a question and answer podcast, and so you get to experience all these different questions and theologies as they you have three very well equipped pastors asking and answering these questions, and so it's a really good one. I like it, and even as a pastor I've been able to grow from some of it as they ask, what should I do in regard to, church discipline. I'm a deacon right now, and I'm just like, whoa,
Mm.
I never thought about approaching a
Yeah,
subject that way. And so that's why I
but it's
think
worth talking about.
it is, and
Hmm.
that's why I
Like,
love it. It kind of transcends the fields in the sense that it is from the laity, that is the common person that's just in our pews and coming to a church, and even all the way up into pastoralship. It's really just it's an open ground that can be covered, and it's by these preachers, these pastors, so they speak in plain language just like you and I.
hmm.
So
Exactly.
yeah, that's one that I really like to listen to. It's funny that we both went that way. So we have Pastor's Perspective recommended by me, and then we have Pastor's Talk recommended by you. Not to be confused. You have
Yes.
one perspective and one talk.
Yes. And now, and no, I was about to say something that definitely would have confused people,
Oh
and
yeah,
it's
it
it's not
does.
worth the joke. It's
Yeah,
not
it
worth the
does.
joke. Um.
Well,
Oh gosh.
I'm looking here. We're about to hit the 1 hour mark, so let's go
Yeah.
ahead and wrap up. And I just want to say thank you guys for tuning in. We love talking about these things. These things are important in our heart as they are coming to us from culture. They're coming to us from essentially the ground level, and they are things that we want to talk about as they are dear to our Christian lives. They impact us, and so we want to really talk about why it impacts us so deeply and bring it down to the ground level. And it's people like you that we love, that we're reaching out to, and that we want and appreciate you joining in with us. So don't forget to like, don't forget to share, don't forget to subscribe or any of that good stuff. And really, we're going to catch you guys on the next one. Much love. See ya.
Peace.